It's the phone call no one wants to get.
Yeah, g'day, I'm calling you because there's been a suspicious transaction on one of your accounts.
And the phone call that could well be a lawyer's worst nightmare.
It's a trust account?
Welcome to LAwcover Confidential, the show that mixes one type of podcast, risk management education, with a slightly more popular one. True crime. What you're about to hear is the true story of a real crime. A fraud committed against the law practice insured by LAwcover. Everything you'll hear comes from first-person accounts given by participants on the condition of anonymity. To protect the identity of those involved, each interview was conducted with the person's face entirely in shadow. You can't see that in this podcast, but we can't be too careful. Not only that, each participant's voice has been disguised
using
cutting-edge
voice manipulation technology.
Also, to protect the professional reputation of Chris, we won't use their real name. Instead, I'll simply refer to him, or her, as Lawyer X. Apparently that pseudonym's already taken, so I will simply refer to him as Chris. Also, occasionally you'll hear this to conceal certain details, sometimes for legal reasons, and sometimes because when it comes to risk assessment, LAwcover's senior lawyer and I see things a little bit differently, which is fine. He didn't have to call me a stupid of an hole. But let's get back to that unexpected trust account withdrawal. If a suspicious transaction's flagged and the amount here was around $150,000, it can be really relieving to know that the bank is on the case.
Okay, so you definitely didn't authorise that transfer?
No, definitely not.
Well, look, in the circumstances, I think it's best that I put a stop on your online access to the trust account so that we can have a look into this.
Okay, sure. In the past, I've had like a credit card that's gone missing or something like that, and the bank cancels it. There's a bit of a downtime before they issue a new one. It's a bit of a hassle, but you deal with it.
But the day after the bank called about the dodgy transaction, the other partner in the law practice dropped by Chris's office.
She comes to me and says, well, there's
these transactions that have gone through on our account. There's several of them. They're all for over $100,000. Do you know what they're for?
And I looked at them and I said, no, I don't recognise any of them. And she said,
well, I don't recognise any of them, and they've gone overseas.
That was the point. I'm thinking, oh shit, this is really serious.
So Chris immediately took the list of transactions his partner had printed out to his local bank branch.
I can remember I walked in to the bank. I was having trouble getting my words out. I said I need to see the manager immediately.
Because now, Chris realises that that guy from the bank, the one who'd contacted him about a fraudulent transaction, was really a scammer. And what was presented as help after a fraud was actually the fraud itself.
At this stage, I'm feeling physically ill.
The staffer at the bank, the real one at the branch, put a stop on any further transactions on the account and alerted the bank's real scams team. But even though there was now a stop on the trust account, more transactions from before the stop kept showing up.
They came out in 21 separate transactions, which totaled just over $2.9 million.
Almost the whole balance of the trust account was gone. Under Section 154 of the Uniform Law, it's mandatory to report suspected trust money irregularities to the Law Society as soon as practicable. So Chris did that, and they were helpful. But they also told him that the trust account had to remain frozen until $2.9 million was paid back into it.
To us, that was huge because it meant that we couldn't pay our clients. And there was another matter in which we'd just settled. I had literally told the people the day before all this happened that we should reserve the funds and be able to make the payment to you by the end of the week. So we're now telling them that, sorry, we're not able to access the funds. The funds are in our trust account, but we're not able to access the funds, and we can't tell you when we will be able to access the funds.
LAwcover policyholders have to notify LAwcover of any claim as soon as practicable. Now, at this stage, there hadn't actually been a claim yet because Chris was still at the beginning of the unenviable task of getting in touch with affected clients to tell them what had happened. But claims were inevitable, so Chris notified his insurer early, which is what LAwcover definitely prefers. By the way, if you notify your insurer of facts that might give rise to a claim, then Section 40 of the Insurance Contracts Act means that claim is still going to be covered even if the claim is made after the policy expires. So Chris sent the notification off to LAwcover by email.
Hello, my name is and I'm a claims solicitor here at I think it's okay to say LAwcover, isn't it? I mean, it's law.
Oh yeah. My apologies to LAwcover.
We do have varying degrees of scams. This was definitely on the high end of, oh my god, that's a lot of money. Even though there were 21 scam transactions over 3 days here, and there were multiple clients who'd been affected, related matters and transactions are treated as a single claim under LAwcover's primary PII policy. We opened a file straight away and briefed one of our panel firms. LAwcover's standard approach is to deal with unlitigated claims in-house. The main reason we briefed out here was to be as proactive as we could about potentially recovering some of the money.
So from LAwcover, Chris's matter was quickly briefed to the panel firm.
So the cyber stuff that comes in is always interesting. When I first got the email about it, it was kind of like, you sort of take a step back and you're like, oh my gosh, I think what's happened here? That was pretty, the quantum alone was pretty concerning.
I've had a number of cyber claims, but nothing quite like this, no. There was a sharp intake of breath, and then we just needed to work out what the hell we do about it. Sometimes the bank can stop a transaction if it hasn't gone through or it's only partially gone through, they'll stop it. Other times you can get recoveries, but I'd say, 90% of the time there's no recovery.
I remember the first time I spoke with Chris, he was obviously very stressed, which is super understandable. For me, there's obviously the law side, but there's also just, human nature and trying to give people comfort and make it as easy as it can be for them. We take a lot of that weight in dealing with these things. Yeah, after that initial conference with him, I remember just thinking, this is just really unfortunate and this is just bad luck. Yeah, it could have happened to anyone.
So LAwcover wanted to move quickly to try and curtail it. That was for Chris's sake as much as their own, but really for Chris.
The purpose of my initial meeting with Chris was to ask him questions that, unless you're across the cyber stuff, you might not think is relevant. It's very difficult to prove what happened, but you need to have some sort of level of comfort that it is actually a cyber scam rather than something else. Not with this particular matter, but just in general, it could be employee fraud. There's other things that it could be. So I think there's that initial threshold. But we figured out pretty quickly that, this is a scam. And given the nature of the attack and the way that it was carried out, it was quite clear to us that we couldn't do any further investigations on our end with respect to the unauthorised access. It's not like, unauthorised access to emails where you can engage someone to review the account and try and get the location of the threat actor or anything like that.
When a legal practice is facing a disaster like this one, there are many unpleasant communications that you need to have.
I think you are in a state of shock, but what then happens is there's all these people that you have to contact and make reports to. There is a requirement that you make a notification to it's like a cyber section of the Federal Police, I think.
Chris used the report page at cyber.gov.au. The page for business notifications has a section that helps identify Commonwealth legislative reporting requirements that could be triggered by a cybersecurity incident.
If they then refer it to the police, so I got hit police station, who I'm not sure that cybercrime is their thing, it's just referred to them because they're the nearest police station. And all of this is while you still got practice that you're trying to run.
And of course, you have to contact all the affected clients.
What I was expecting is that this would generate a whole series of really hostile conversations. Most of them weren't. What surprised me was that a number of these people were not angry at me. They were angry about what had happened, but they weren't particularly angry at me, which really took me by surprise.
Chris is a long-standing solicitor with very strong relationships with his clients. And they were aggrieved, as you'd expect, but when he said, "We're trying to deal with this," which is exactly what was happening, they were pretty understanding. But I think that's just a testament to him and his ability to make and keep good relationships with his clients. He was a victim. People recognised that. And I'm not sure precisely what he said to his clients, but I suspect he said the Law Society's been notified and LAwcover's involved, and that we're doing whatever we can to try and recover this money, which was true.
And Chris says the fact that LAwcover had already been notified was indeed useful when he was telling his clients what had happened.
LAwcover had said to us that if people wanted to know where things were at, we could tell them to contact LAwcover. And that was quite helpful, because at least people thought, well, at least it's been dealt with by insurance and so on.
Chris also spoke with a close friend in the profession.
And he just said, mate, we need to get through this. And it was that statement that not you need to get through it. We need to get through it. Like he was in there battling with me. That was very encouraging. I can remember saying to him, mate, I feel like such an idiot. And he said, look,
you can't feel like that.
He said it was you. He said
it happened to you. It could happen to me. It could happen to any of us.
He said
it's a classic case of there, but for the grace of God, go any of us.
So he said,
don't feel like that.
He said,
you can't let all the good work you've done for people over all these years be brought
down by some asshole. And I said, well, thanks, mate. I really appreciate that help. And he said, well,
whatever I can do to help, whenever you need to ring me, whatever, just tell me.
Then there was what was perhaps the most difficult conversation of all.
I've had the conversation with my wife. We've been married for 44 years, and I said to her, the trust account's been scammed, and it was my fault. I was the one who was taken in. And I said, look, if we lose our house, will you stick with me?
Sorry.
And she said,
Yeah, I will.
I
don't want to leave this place, but life is about more than that.
So that was very reassuring.
Even though LAwcover and the panel solicitors were satisfied that none of the policy exclusions applied to Chris, the sheer scale of the losses from this scam was daunting.
One of the things that we did raise with Chris is that the limit of indemnity under your LAwcover policy is $2 million. You are still uninsured for nearly $1 million.
And I'm at that stage making inquiries as to whether my superannuation is at risk. So financially it had the potential to be disastrous, but it was disastrous all around.
LAwcover has options for top-up cover up to $20 million. That would have been useful here, but in this case the firm's cover was under the standard PII policy. Now, as you'd expect, LAwcover has a formal process for deciding if a claim's covered and then officially notifying the insured of its decision. And all that can take a while. But given the extraordinary circumstances of this case, things played out a little differently than usual.
Ordinarily, if a claim is made, we would negotiate directly with the claimant and pay the claimant the lost funds.
So she said, we've discussed this at LAwcover, and recognizing that you have a major problem, and one of your major problems being restoring the imbalance in your trust account, we think we will be able to pay the whole amount into your trust account.
So we agreed to pay $1.9 million back into the firm's trust account.
The $2 million claim limit is inclusive of legal costs, so $100,000 was retained to cover the legal fees associated with recovery efforts.
It doesn't completely restore your balance, but it gets you a lot closer to it than what you were before. And at that stage, you're thinking, maybe there is a way out of this. That was a really big thing.
While all that was happening, Chris was also dealing with the bank.
Which is really, really difficult. Once the report is made, you get a number, and there's a telephone number for the scam team.
If your call relates to a scam, please press 3. Thank you for holding. You are number 15 in the queue. Please hold.
You ring the number, and it just goes nowhere.
But eventually Chris did manage to speak to someone from the bank, and they became a reliable point of contact. And after a few days, the bank told Chris that one fraudulent transfer worth about $150,000 had been recovered.
And I thought at that stage, well, maybe there's some cause for optimism, although I wasn't feeling particularly optimistic. But I said to him, surely, at some stage, there's 21 transactions here, something rings a bell with the bank and says, this is unusual. And he told me, well, yes, there was. The first transaction went through, and when the second transaction came up, it raised a flag. And we attempted to contact somebody to authorize it.
But of course, by then, the scammer had control of the trust account, so the bank's authorization request actually went to the scammer.
They flagged it after the first transaction as being unusual, but they still then proceeded with the remaining 20 transactions. Now there are spam protection requirements on banks.
The scams prevention framework means businesses in a regulated sector like banking have to take reasonable steps to prevent, detect and disrupt scams. But that wasn't in place when this scam happened.
I remember turning on the TV when I got home from work, and there was an ad which said that the bank uses this wonderful AI-driven technology that detects and prevents scams and to continuously monitor for anything that's out of the ordinary to detect and stop fraud. So there was that question of how could they not have picked this up? And they did. They said that they flagged it.
We asked him, what's your normal activity like in this trust account? Do you send money overseas? The answer was, I think he'll only ever sent money overseas once in 20 years. Do you normally have a large amount of transactions going out one day? No. The most he would have would be 1 or 2. So we thought this should present itself as being extremely unusual to a bank. And we've had issues with banks before, and the banks had previously not been particularly either responsive or helpful, pushing all the responsibility onto the underlying client or the insured solicitor or somebody else, saying it's got nothing to do with us, we're just the holder of the money. So we called the bank.
To be honest, the bank was pretty good. Obviously, they were investigating and they were taking it seriously. There was no doubt about that. But, they've got massive legal teams and they've got all their protections and their disclaimers and whatnot. So you just never know what approach they'll take.
The bank basically told us to put it in writing. So we, along with Chris, drafted a letter for Chris to send. And in the meantime, waiting for the bank to start this, we were formulating what we might otherwise do if the bank wasn't going to come to the party. We thought we were going to have to sue them, the bank, and that's not going to be quick. As much as you might seek expedition in the courts. You never guaranteed that. It wasn't shaping up to be a very good Christmas.
Yep, on top of everything else, all this was happening just before Christmas.
It was just so close to Christmas and I felt so bad about what had happened. I remember thinking, oh, please don't go into next year.
So on the day that we're supposed to close for Christmas, I get a call from the bank and they say, we've got something to tell you. The bank's come to a decision on this. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not sure I'm going to like what they're going to tell me, but... And then they said, the bank has decided to repay every payment except the first one. And I'm thinking at this stage, did I hear that correctly? And I'm trying to make notes of this conversation as you normally would, but my hand's so shaky, I went back and looked at the notes. You'd probably be flat out understanding what it says. And they said, so that makes the total payment from the bank 2,600,000 and something thousand and so many cents. And I said, oh, that's very good news. Now, could we get the lawyer on the line? And we can just... Because I thought, I want someone else to hear this. So we get him on a conference call, and I say, would you mind just repeating what you just told me? And so they run through it all again.
Which, again, was that the bank agreed to pay over $2.5 million back into the trust account. Everything except the first scam withdrawal, which was about $149,000.
So as soon as we hang up from that call, calls me, and I think the first words she said were, Happy Christmas.
And of course, the good news was passed on to LAwcover quickly too.
I missed the call, actually. It was just before Christmas, and I think I got a text message. I've still got it, actually. Yep, 20th of December. Hold off on making any payment in might reimburse, just working out details. So that was sent on the 20th of December, 3:29 p.m. And I responded, like, what? And then he responded, call me. And I think I did.
And, you know, it's one of those things where you think, that's unbelievable. And it was all but, I think, 149,000. And so I asked LAwcover, will you cover that 149,000? And she said, absolutely.
So, between the bank and LAwcover, the trust account would be fully replenished.
And then we got the letter that confirmed it.
I remember just like staring at my laptop and being like, oh my God, okay. Like, how good is that? But it's, you know, it was great and it was surprising, but it was the right result.
They say if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And that's almost always right with scams. But this was the rare exception that proved the rule. And just in time for Christmas.
It's great. I'm really happy for Chris at the outcome. Obviously it's great for LAwcover as well, but really for Chris.
As you'd expect, this whole experience has had an enduring impact.
I wouldn't say I'm not proud of what I've achieved as a lawyer, because I am. But it's tainted everything, you know. It's there. And it's over. Financially, it's over. But it's sort of like, I don't know. It was hard. And people ask me, am I affected by it? And the answer is yes. I just wish it hadn't happened. I mean, you can't wish things away, but, you know.
I think about this matter a lot. It was a combination of, obviously, the amount of the fraud and the circumstances around the fraud, the timing of the year, the timing for Chris. It was a bit of a roller coaster in that there was this crazy amount and this crazy thing happened and we didn't know where we were going to end up. So yeah, of all the matters I've done, it definitely ranks up there. For a matter that was so short in duration, but it's had a lasting impact on me. Yep.
And although Chris and the whole practice really were on the brink of ruin, they were able to get back to business.
I thought some of the clients would sort of think, how can we trust anything that happens with that firm again? And what I've subsequently realised is that for a lot of those people, they actually never stopped putting their trust in us. They were aggrieved about what happened, but I think everybody recognised that this was not something that we did to deliberately relieve them of their money.
I was really pleased with the way that everyone, between LAwcover and the panel firm and the Law Society, worked together to support Chris. I mean, I really hope that Chris felt supported and that he felt that he had a whole team behind him trying to get this outcome.
The people that I had contact with, both at LAwcover and at the panel firm, they were all enormously supportive, and I've said that to them. I just felt they were really helpful in getting through the whole process.
You know, we're all lawyers, and I think from my perspective, you never sort of forget that these claims pop up and they can happen to anyone. And I think LAwcover, they have a good approach. They obviously care about their insureds and wanting to do the right thing. Yeah, obviously insurers all have different approaches, but I've never had a matter where I've seen the approach by LAwcover and thought, they're looking to decline cover. Yeah, I think they have a really good approach.
This case is a reminder of how important it is to be vigilant about scams, and in particular to be suspicious of any unsolicited contact from a bank or other institution, especially if you're asked to log on to trust accounts while on the phone. But looking back on the whole experience, for Chris, there's another, broader message.
I don't know how many people said to me, you know, if you need support, we can refer you to counselling or whatever. Even the bank said it. And I thought, well, the last thing I'm going to do is go to counsellors recommended by the bank. But I sort of thought at the time, I don't need counselling, I need the money back. That's what I need. But in hindsight, that may not have been right. Well, I did need the money back, desperately. But my view about counselling may not have been right either. I mean, I was fortunate to have lots of good people around me. Very fortunate, yeah. And that helps. It really does help. You need to rely on people. When you've got problems, if things go badly and there's people that you trust, just talk to them. Tell them. Because you can get enormous support from that. It may not rectify the situation, but from a morale perspective, it's enormously helpful. And I think you've just got to keep people in the loop. Yeah, and you've got to be honest with people. You know, some of our friends, there were some people we told as we were going through this, and they said, well, what can we do to help you out? You know, and speaking to a couple of them later, they didn't just mean like, what can we do as in have you round to dinner, that sort of thing. We mean financially, you know. If you need help, tell us and we'll help. You know, and that's one of the things, that's one of the messages from this whole thing, is that there are a lot of very bad people out there, but there's a lot of very good people as well. You know. And you shouldn't let the bad people outweigh the good people. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to LAwcover Confidential. For more information about avoiding scams and other risk management info, go to the resource centre at lawcover.com.au.